2024. I will note we're going to reshuffle the agenda a little bit. A person we're recognizing for employee recognition is running a little late, so we're going to shuffle that after reports. Other than that, if there's no other changes, we can proceed on the agenda. All right. Seeing none, the next thing is approval of the September 9th, 2024 meeting minutes. Were there any changes or additions? Seeing none, I'd entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
I make a motion.
Moved by Councilmember Carter. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilmember Chambliss. Is there any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. And the motion carries. Ahead of reports, we do have someone here who would like to comment. And so if you come up and introduce yourself, and if you can, keep it to a couple of minutes. Thanks.
Of course, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Barber and members. My name is Joshua Hodak. I'm a Senior Land Use and Transportation Program Manager for the Sierra Club in Minnesota. I'm here in regards to non-consent business item number 6, which is in regards to the study that the Metropolitan Council will be undertaking to look at the extension of the world-renowned Midtown Greenway over the Mississippi River to the other side of Hennepin County and into St. Paul. As you probably well know, there's been a vision for this expansion for decades since the trail was concluded at West River Parkway in Minneapolis. And then there is a bridge, the Short Line Bridge as it's known, which is now owned by Canadian Pacific Kansas City Southern, a newly merged railroad that owns track and right-of-way from Canada to Mexico. So this bridge and the dead-end spur that it serves and only serves, which heads down to Hiawatha Avenue and the one remaining grain silo ADM mill that's there with one train or less a day that rumbles along at 5 miles per hour over this bridge is the only service except for, of course, Metropolitan Council's Metro Transit new light rail vehicles that get delivered on flatbed. Not to go into more details because I do want to respect your time, but legislation was passed in 2023 at the state legislature mandating this study. And what I'm here to talk to you about today is concerns that what was in the legislation, what is in state law, is covered in this proposal before you in the scope of the study and the I don't know the technical terms, but the recommendation for the consulting firm of Kimley Horn. So there's two things I want to bring to your attention. One is in state legislation, this study is to look at lots of different things, but one is cost. What would it cost to do this expansion? We're concerned that that's not outlined in the scope that's before you, going to Kimley Horn. And the other piece is even more important, and that's identifying the legal parameters of a shared use agreement with this railroad, CPKC, who owns the right-of-way on both sides of the river and, of course, the bridge itself. Without that, without parameters of what a shared use agreement the public could live with, if you will, in negotiations with the railroad, there's no way to move forward. And Kimley Horn, as I understand it, is an civil engineering firm. And so the concern is, how are we going to get to the parameters of a legal agreement? How do we approach the negotiating table not knowing what we want if we, the public, be it likely Hennepin County Regional Railroad Authority, but whoever that entity is. So just wanted to flag that for you in case you're not familiar with all the specifics here. Hopefully, we'll get some answers today in the staff presentation, but it is a real concern. We want this 500 and something thousand dollars, taxpayer dollars, to go to what we really need to move forward. So just want to make sure that that everything's covered as we scope out this plan. So we're at a critical decision point, in my opinion, to make sure that we're judicious with taxpayer dollars and effectively moving forward with the scope of this study that really is an implementation plan, not a feasibility study. And I think that is well articulated. We really want to know how to do this, not if we should do it. There's consensus from every level of government, from Minneapolis Park Board up to our U.S. senators who are aware of this project and want to see it happen. So happy to take any questions now or even later, but look forward to hearing the discussion and the presentation.
Thank you, Josh.
Yep.
All right, so now we will go on to reports. So we'll start with MTS Services Executive Director Carlson.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair, and good afternoon, council members. Very short report today that it's sharing and learning season, as there's a number of conferences underway and upcoming. A number of staff from our planning team are attending the Association of Metropolitan Planning Organizations that's convening this week in Salt Lake City. They'll join around 400 of their peers from around the country. We have several presentations that we are delivering as part of the conference, so contributing to the conference as well, ranging from sharing updates on our activity sim open source activity-based model update to our equity evaluation that'll actually be coming to the Committee of the Whole in October, as well as presenting on addressing the housing crisis through a combination of land use and transportation planning, actually by community development division staff attending the conference. So something we're excited for and eager to share some of those findings with the council in the future. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Great. Any questions or comments?
I'm just glad that we're attending, and I'm looking forward to hearing the feedback that you receive and any additional knowledge as well.
Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. All right, on to Metro Transit General Manager Candaris.
Councilmember Barber, committee members, thank you. A couple updates for Metro Transit. First off, today marks the beginning of C-Trac's Think Train Week. This is a nationwide campaign that raises awareness about the importance of safe behaviors around rail corridors. So transit agencies and passenger and freight rail providers across the country are all participating in this C-Trac's Think Train Week. For Metro Transit's part, on Wednesday, we're going to spend some time reminding people about safe behaviors around rail tracks. We'll be at the Green Line East Bank Station and other station, again, really to try to raise awareness and make sure people are practicing safe behaviors as they're around our tracks. At the University of Minnesota one, the East Bank one, will be joined by ATU leadership, representatives from the University of Minnesota Police Department and the Department of Public Safety to help us get that message out. I'll also mention, if you've been out on light rail recently, you might have noticed that we have new sidewalk clings to try to remind people to be alert as they approach the tracks. We're also placing rail safety messages on billboards along University Avenue, and print and online safety materials are also being updated. So while we are particularly focused on rail safety this week, obviously safety is a top priority every week and something we focus on year round. So we are continuing to do all we can to educate the public, prepare our operators, and continue to examine other strategies aimed at reducing incidents. Switching gears, the other update is just a reminder for council members that this Thursday is another tour opportunity. We are arranging tours for council members of the Transit Control Center and the Rail Control Center. You're welcome to participate in one or both of those tours. You should have all the information, but please let me know if you need any details. The Transit Control Center tour that's on this campus, separate building, will start at 4 p.m. on Thursday. So. With that, I'd be happy to take any questions.
All right, any questions or comments? I'd encourage any of you to go on those tours because I think that is one of the most fascinating parts. It's really the true behind the scenes. So it's really an interesting thing to learn about. So, all right. All right. I know, Mr. Dugan, you just arrived, but now we're going to put you in the hot seat. So
That's great. I
all
appreciate
right.
that.
There you go. Tab report. You had perfect timing.
Okay. Please. You know, these things are made for much younger people than me, right? Okay. All right. Thank you, Madam Chair. This is going to be probably the most interesting report I've ever done, and I think you're going to be spellbound, with this. We're going to talk about a couple of things. UZAs, UZA, and I'll have to ask Mr. Carlson to correct me if I'm incorrect. An UZA is an urban area which usually is above 50,000, to be distinguished from an urban cluster, which is 2,500 to 50,000 people. We are in the super UZA because we have, currently, according to the 2020 census, we have 2.9 million people in the metro. The urbanized area has to be certified by the Secretary of Commerce. And that's first part of it. And then the other part of it, what it does is it triggers funding mechanisms or for example, the FTA, the Federal Transit Administration, sets forth a safety plan requirement as one of the different things that it does. And it's under, and since we receive what are called 5307 funds, we have to enact that policy. And again, it's just one of the many requirements that they have. And if you can just give me a second. Sorry, I had something called a job that, I had to do when I got here. It's kind of an inconvenience. Don't tell my boss that, okay?
It is televised here.
I'm sorry?
It is televised.
Well, well, I won't be here next week because I'll be on unemployment line. That'll be great. Well, anyway, I can't find it. But the urbanized area, UZA, has it comes from definitions in 49 USC 5302. In case anyone wants to go look at it, there's a lot of information out there. And if I could, I can't show you this, but I tried to make a screenshot. But this is the urbanized area for Minnesota. And it's broken down by rail, subway, ferry, cable car, and then population over 1 million, 200,000 to 1 million, et cetera. And it tracks, where we are. Now, where Mr. Carlson is going to have to help me is it has some parts of Wright and Sherburne going towards Forest Lake, Ramsey, Elk River, and then I believe it now stops short of the St. Croix. Does not go into Wisconsin. Yep. Okay. That's probably more than anyone ever wanted to know. Okay. Then the last thing, or the next thing I thought would be helpful would be on streets. The word or the nomenclature of complete streets is starting to become part of the vernacular. And complete streets, again, comes from the US DOT and also Minnesota statutes 174.75. And that refers to, as you can imagine, the designing of streets for the reducing pedestrian risk, bicyclist risk, but also making it convenient for drivers, any kind of transport. And it's meant to be an overarching planning mechanism to get to this point. However, contained within that, just again for nomenclature, there are several classifications of bicycle lanes. Again, as we get into more safety, and certainly at the tab, this is becoming an issue that's discussed, funding for bike peds. There are bike lanes, which obviously makes sense, they're unmarked. Buffered, which is where there is a distinction between the roadway, the vehicle way, and the bike. And that's usually with, maybe the white pylons and things like that. Then there's something called a sharrow, and a sharrow is a triangular direction arrow to show the bike's way to go and to alert cars that the bicycles are coming this way. There's unmarked lanes, which makes a sense. Protected bike lanes, that's the maximum protection. Bike boulevards, which would be something like Summit Avenue, and side paths and trail shared youth path. Thank you, Madam Chair. When I didn't greet all of you, my apologies. Thank you.
It's all right, we caught you, so you just sat down, so thank you. Any questions or comments? Very good, all right, thank you, Peter. Okay, all right, now I'm going to turn to General Manager Candaris, and we'll move on to employee recognition.
Now you can go home and impress all your friends and family. Anybody want this for the refrigerator? No.
I know what ooze is.
Chair Barber, council members, today we are happy to be recognizing staff who worked across departments to ensure people were effectively engaged during the Blue Line Extension's supplemental draft environmental impact statement process. The team that is being recognized here today is being awarded this accomplishment for their thorough and detailed outreach efforts to ensure community groups and individuals knew when and how to review the draft environmental impact statement and provide feedback. Ultimately, these efforts helped build relationships in the community and contributed to a better understanding and awareness of the project as a whole. So with that, with Chair Barber's permission, I'd like to turn it over to Deputy General Manager of Capital Programs, Nick Thompson.
Chair, thank you, General Manager, council members. I'm happy to be here tonight. This is exciting to recognize the team that put forward and led the supplemental draft EIS process. And we've presented this document to you and the public feedback on it, and it's kind of it's a massive undertaking to do this. And if you think back to when we started this, it was probably during the pandemic when collecting information from people was difficult and understanding and working on this. And the data that goes into the SDIS is both an important document in a project like this. It's not something we do very often, only on larger projects. It's an important document legally, regulatory, but it's also an important document for the community. And you know, the team that we're awarding tonight really put forward a goal of having like a cutting edge document that really involved the community in shaping that document, and also, you know, involve the community and doing everything we can to get feedback into developing the document. But then when it was ready, making sure the community could understood what it was. And also could provide meaningful comments. It's a draft document intentionally because we want the public to read it and understand what we've missed and what we can still do to develop it before it's final. You know, with this project, we had a particular focus on environmental justice, and if you can take one chapter away from this very, I think, 2,800-page document, that chapter is so important for this project, and really what they shaped there is really, we identified a lot of items we need to mitigate, and by identifying them as mitigation items, and we will be able to mitigate them with project funds and the project itself, so we can build a great project in the community. So I want to recognize the team tonight, and I know Kelsey had a few words she wanted to add too.
Thank you, Chair, council members. Just wanted to thank our entire interdisciplinary project team that came together to get this document prepared, our agency partners, particularly Hennepin County, and as well as our community members and organizations that helped shape both the information presented in the document to make sure that community voices were reflected there, but also to help us get information out when the SDIS was published, and asking those tough questions so that we could be prepared as we got out there to share the information in that document. So just want to highlight that community members and organizations really played a key role in the success of this document.
And Kyle from Hennepin County is not able to join us tonight. We will give him this, but it was very important that we recognize Hennepin County as our partner. And Kyle's role in this was really important. We really see this as a partnership with them, and they're very important. They're embedded as team members in our project. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Councilmember Barber, Mr. Thompson, would you actually name the other people we're honoring today? Sorry, that was not in my I mean, I can guess.
I see them standing back
Yes,
there.
I know.
Donnelly, our environmental and our outreach leads, so. And Kelsey Young here is our environmental manager. I thought you had stated that, sorry. That's kind of important.
See, we get a little latitude, everything goes askew on us. Whatever. Thank you for your hard work. Thank you so much.
Did you like it? Yeah. Oh,
Thank you, guys. Thank you for all your hard work.
that's my son. Oh, that's me.
All right, down to all of the other, not as much fun business, but business. First, we have no items on consent tonight, but we have several non-consent items. The first one is business item 2024-204, which is the disposition of Chicago Lake Transit Center. We have Sonja Burseth and Kelly Jameson here to present again.
All right, thank you for having us again today. My name is Sonja Burseth. I'm a senior planner in engineering facilities, and I'm joined with
Kelly Jameson, Director of Real Estate.
Thank you. So as a reminder, we are seeking council authorization to dispose of the easement at Chicago Lake Transit Center. And again, with the completion of those stations for B line and D line, buses will permanently move out of the transit center. So I just wanted to highlight the discussion from the September 9th Transportation Committee. There was concern that demolition of the shelter structures could lead to unintended uses. There was a desire to influence positive outcomes for the site and for the community. And there was a need to better understand the future of the site and engagement with partners. So the council action was postponed until today's meeting, and as an opportunity for us to return to provide more information about the future uses considered and engagement. So engagement with stakeholders, riders, broader community via B and D line projects show that customers prefer a faster and more reliable transit experience. In 2017 and 2018, planners studied whether future D line service would move out of the transit center, and the recommendation from that study was that the stations would be located on platforms outside of the transit center in Chicago Avenue. The Metro D line and the Route 5 have been using those platforms since December of 2022. So riders and again adjacent stakeholders were engaged a second time in 2019 and 2021 during the Metro B line station planning, with engagement findings also supporting a move of the B line stations and Route 21 service out of the transit center on Lake Street. Staff have continued engagement with key stakeholders in the area, both those with an interest in the land and easement such as MEC, as well as others around Lake and Chicago. And again, BRT service delivers faster travel times through those red bus lanes as shown in the photo, all-door boarding, off-board fare payment, and other transit advantages. Metro Transit's investment in Chicago Lake area is ongoing through those two projects, which provide faster trips and improved experiences. So when the B-line stations are substantially completed on Lake Street, Route 21 will move on street, permanently leaving the transit center. After fall of 2024, there will be no bus service in the transit center. There will soon be 4 BRT stations at Chicago Lake, each with BRT amenities at each station. Additionally, the city has been piloting mobility hub elements at this intersection since about 2019, and our shared mobility program manager works closely with her city counterpart. There is bike and scooter parking along multiple blocks, EV charging on Columbus Avenue, just 1 street west of this intersection, and lots of wayfinding both on street and in signage. The city is not interested in taking over the transit center shelter structures for mobility hub use, as they would be overbuilt for that function. The city is in conversations with property owners at the intersection to potentially incorporate mobility hub elements into a new development. We know that there is significant community investment and interest in this area, and Metro Transit's goal is to continue to be an active partner at Chicago Lake. So since 2023, Metro Transit has convened a monthly meeting with key stakeholders to take action on safety and livability issues. Invitees to that partnership include Alina, Ryan Companies, Neighborhood Development Center, or NDC, Sheridan Hotel, Hennepin County, Minneapolis Police Department, Metro Transit Police Department, Lake Street Council, City Council members and staff, and Pillsbury United Communities. Participants share strategies and deter nuisance activities, consult with MPD and MTPD on crime trends and crime prevention. One action that came out of the discussions from this partnership included a Metro Transit-led project where we installed a fence around utility cabinets behind the South Transit Center building in order to reduce hiding places. So this was initiated in the summer of 2023 and completed by November. There are ongoing concerns with safety and security around the transit center structures. Disposition and removal of buildings is strongly supported by this group and is consistent with our safety and security action plan.
Thank you. And I wanted to talk to you just a little bit about the existing conditions at the Midtown Exchange block, how the transit easements fit in, and then future vision from property owners. And so you can see here, we kind of zoomed out to show the entire block. MEC, or Midtown Exchange Commons, owns the property where transit structures are located. To the north, you see the International Management, which is a Sheraton Hotel. That structure has been closed and under construction, but we've been told that it's planned to reopen later this year. To the north of that is the HICRA, the Hennepin County Regional Rail parcels that connect to the Midtown Greenway. And then fronting Lake Street, there is one small parcel owned by Hamdi Restaurant, or operated as Hamdi Restaurant. And next to that, NDC has acquired 2 parcels that were destroyed in the riots of 2020, and they have plans for future redevelopment. So if we overlay the transit easements onto this map and also overlaid the red bus lanes and the new transit stops, you can see that the solid blue is a driveway easement, and then the hatched blue is a shelter easement. And to take a step back, when we look at what is an easement is the right to use property for a specific and limited purpose. An easement runs with the land, so there isn't a start date or an end date. It's something that's ongoing. Even if MEC, who's the underlying owner, sold their property, the easements would remain. We think of our property interests as a bundle of sticks. And so a fee owner has the entire bundle of sticks. They can own, dispose, do as they please with it. An easement is really just one stick. So the transit easements have the right to use the property. And these easements are even more restrictive than right-of-way easements that we might have for public road purposes. The easements here are strictly for where it's solid blue to drive buses, and that's shared with other traffic. The hatched easement are for transit structures. We can't park, we can't have idle buses. It really even just says rubber tire buses. So very restrictive right to use the property. When we talk to the underlying fee owner and NDC in particular, they have a vision for this site. And so this rendering shows something that NDC was willing to share with us in what they would call a 2-phase development. The first phase is the innovation center that they have planned for the corner of Lake and Chicago. They're hoping to bring in incubator businesses, community space, and really activate this corner. In the second phase, they're hoping to put affordable housing where the transit easements and shelter are currently located, and have indicated that having the easements terminated and the shelters removed would really help spur this future development. This is just another rendering provided by NDC of kind of their co-designed innovation center, a 3-story building that really activates the street corner here. So in coordinating future plans, releasing the easement supports TOD, transit-oriented development, on this site, which is consistent with Metro Transit's TOD policy along with City of Minneapolis's TOD plans. The ownership, Midtown Exchange Commons, sent a statement of support for dissolving the easement and removing the shelter structures. The removal of the shelters allows for an expanded footprint and future development that connects along the Grand Promenade. In looking at the disposition strategy, real estate policy for the Metropolitan Council says that when property is excess or surplus, we need to bring it to council for approval, for your support that this property right is no longer needed. In addition, we're seeking FTA concurrence, and that guidance is still pending, although we hope to get that concurrence soon. The recommended disposition strategy is to terminate the easement agreements, release the transit interests. The plan, in partnership with the underlying owner, it would be to demolish the buildings and restore the site to allow for redevelopment. And so the proposed action 2024-204 is that the Metropolitan Council declare property at 2946 Chicago Avenue in Minneapolis surplus for disposition, authorize the regional administrator to negotiate the termination of the transit agreement and operation maintenance agreement between council and Midtown Exchange Common, and release the council's transit interest contingent on Region 5 Federal Transit Administration concurrence. And we're happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Carter.
Thank you. Very much appreciating the investigation and the work that you did to understand the vision and the future plans. I know that as you describe the livability committee or partnership, that has been focused on the transit safety and livability in the area, very much engaged with our presence there. And as you describe, that area continues to be an area of interest. Can you tell me what you envision for the livability partnership once we demolish and vacate that site, restore it?
Yeah, Chair Barber, council members, that's a great question. I think as long as the shelter structures will be there and through the project, I imagine the committee will still continue to meet. Our customer relations team leads that, and I believe there are also discussions about like other places close to the intersection, so there might be additional benefits to continuing that discussion, but I'd have to check in with our customer relations team to see what their vision is.
It just seems to me that it has been a way of engaging as a neighbor, good neighbor in that area, and could potentially continue, given our investment in the area in general, certainly through the structure's presence there, but also embodying other areas and perhaps parlaying the good work you've done there into other area investments as well. Thank you. Thank you. I thought that was a really good report.
Councilmember Chambliss.
Oh, thank you for taking the time to kind of dig into this a little bit further. I appreciate the additional information, the parameters, and the context of the different partners involved. And I'm especially excited that there were some plans that we may not have been privy to had we not pushed for additional information about redevelopment opportunities in that area, which is definitely needed, and with a trusted organization such as NDC. So I think it makes me feel good about going forward and making a decision on this business item.
Okay. Any additional questions or comments? Councilmember Pacheco.
Madam Chair, members, I actually know the corner well, and right across the street is another vacant lot. And so there's basically, with this one, there's two vacant lots on this side. Nice restaurant, residential, Campo is the restaurant on the first floor. And the Minneapolis Workforce Center and Clues are in the other corner. So there's both, there's housing, there's workforce, there's some community going on around that whole half a block that you're talking about there, because that's very extensive. My only reservation last time was to leave anything vacant for any period of time, because like I said then, is that when, that's where you get the graffiti, that's where you get everything, and it just starts up and makes everything else around it kind of fall in line there. So I'm pleased with the report here, because I can have a better sense of what we're doing, and there's a commitment to move on it. So thank you.
Okay. Additional questions or comments? All right, I just have one. Thank you to both Sonja and Kelly for taking the time to do the additional work. Also really want to thank the Neighborhood Development Council and Midtown Exchange Commons for sharing this information. They didn't necessarily need to, so we really appreciate that they took the time to do that. But with that, I would entertain a motion to approve business item 2024-204.
So moved.
Moved by Councilmember Pacheco, second by Councilmember Chambliss. Is there any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Thank you. All right, now we're on to business item 2024-237, and I think we've got 238. I guess we've got different people for both of them, so sorry. We have Captain Raymond here for the JPA with Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension.
Yes, thank you. Good afternoon, Chair Barber and council members. Richard Raymond, I'm the Captain of Patrol Division for Metro Transit PD. Here to present business item 2024-237, Joint Powers Agreement with Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension and the Metro Transit Police Department contract number 241038. Essentially, this is a joint powers agreement, JPA, that we would do with the Minnesota BCA to assign one full-time Metro Transit PD officer, either investigator or officer, to this joint agency violent crime reduction unit under the leadership of the special agent in charge by the BCA. This is a unit comprised of multi-agencies to concentrate on disruption of violent crime statewide. And this is a combination of kind of an intelligence and street investigations unit that we would take part of. Not only would it allow for us to partner with local law enforcement agencies for that collaboration and partnership in the area, it would provide additional resource for Metro Transit Police Department to address the safety and security concerns along transit corridors. Part of that is the parties wish to work together to prevent, investigate, and prosecute violent crimes, including but not limited to murder and assaults, trafficking of illicit drugs and firearms, carjacking, and other violent crimes. So I will stop there unless there's additional questions.
No problem. Questions or comments? Councilmember Carter?
I'm sorry, I thought I heard citywide. Did you mean metro-wide, or is this a specific city project?
Chair Barber, council member, this is actually the this unit is actually a violent crime reduction unit statewide. It's a statewide.
Statewide, I'm sorry. Thank you.
Additional questions or comments? All right, so the proposed action is that the Metropolitan Council authorize the regional administrator to execute joint powers agreement number 24I038 with the Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension. With that, I'd entertain a motion to approve business item 2024-237.
So moved.
Moved by Councilmember Cameron. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Carter. Is there any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Thank you, Captain.
Chair members, thank you.
All right, now we're moving to Captain Dotseth for business item 2024-238, which is joint powers agreement associated with the Gold Line BRT project. Welcome.
Chair Barber, council members, good afternoon. My name is Joe Dotseth. I am a captain of the Transit Police. I'm also serving duties as the chief of police.
Thank you.
On top of my normal duties as well right now. I'm here to present business item 2024-238. The proposed action is for the Metropolitan Council to authorize the regional administrator to execute joint powers agreements, JPAs, with partner agencies within and surrounding the Gold Line bus rapid transit area, specifically the cities of Woodbury, the cities of Oakdale, cities of Maplewood, and the county of Washington. A little bit of the background information on this information here is the last couple of months, really, we've been coming to Transportation Committee and the Council, updating our joint powers agreements, and this list really here is on that list. I will say these JPAs, a little bit different from the one that Captain Raymond just presented, where we're actually assigning somebody to a unit. This one really here is defining our roles and responsibilities under state statute 473.407. And these JPAs, this specific JPAs or these JPAs with these partner agencies will clearly define the roles and responsibilities of the PD in these local law enforcement areas. There is no funding attached to this agreements. And just before I take any questions, I'd just like to thank Alicia and Morgan from the Golden Gate Project Office. Really, the last couple of weeks, we've been talking a lot about a whole community approach to public safety and everything that we've been doing in the region. And I'd just like to acknowledge the project office for this. They really helped us meet with each one of these agencies. We've done outreach with them, having continuing conversations. We have a public safety drill coming up with them, but we would not be able to bring this business item forward without our partners from the project office. So thank you for that.
Very good. Thank you. Questions or comments? All right, I have one question. I'm going to channel Councilmember Vento, who is home, not feeling well tonight. So she was curious as to why St. Paul and Ramsey aren't part of this.
Councilmember Barber, St. Paul, we already have a joint powers agreement with them, so that's already signed and that's all taken care of. City of Ramsey, or the County of Ramsey, we're working with, negotiating with them, so we still need to meet with the sheriff and his team, but that is on our list as well.
Okay. All right, additional questions or comments?
Oops, sorry. Sugar.
All right, then the proposed action is that the Metropolitan Council authorize the regional administrator to execute joint powers agreement with partner agencies within and surrounding the Gold Line Bus Rapid Transit service area, the city of Woodbury with JPA 24I037, Oakdale 24I042, Maplewood 24I041, and the county of Washington 24I044. That I'd entertain a motion.
So moved.
Moved by Councilmember Tony Carter. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Tyrone Carter. Is there any other discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Thank you, Captain. All right, now we are on to our fourth business item, which is business item 2024-181, which is management and administration of Metro Van Pool. We have John Harper here.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, committee members. John Harper, Manager of Contract Transit Service in MTS. Bring before you today business item 2024-181 regarding contracting out administrative service for Metro Van Pool. Before I bring the business item to you, I want to take a step back here and just talk about the program. What is Metro Van Pool and why are we delivering this program for the region? As it states in the business item background, Metro Van Pool is a council-sponsored program designed to decrease the number of single occupancy vehicle on the road during peak travel periods. The program develops partnerships with businesses, with various TMOs, transit management organizations around the region, so forth, to pool riders to go to single businesses or businesses in the same areas and put them in a van, hence van pooling. And we provide incentives to facilitate that. And van pooling is a strategy that's part of the travel demand management, or the TDM portfolio of strategies. And this program for us, we delivered on behalf of the region. The program is a relatively small program for the council, but as I just mentioned, it fulfills a responsibility of us to provide one of the strategies for transit demand management, TDM. The program statistics shown here show that we have about 53 van pools. It goes up and down in the months as participants join or as van pools join the program and exit the program. We've had pre-COVID as many as about the mid-70s in the number of active van pools. And you can see here it's a relatively modest subsidy per passenger trip. $296 is a pretty small amount for us. And that is our share of the expense of the van pools. Wow. So yeah, it's a fairly inexpensive program for the pools that we deliver. We've been delivering this program since about 2001 and delivered it in a variety of ways with a variety of different sets of rules. I'll talk about a few of them in a slide or two here, but the program, the mode of service van pooling, was part of the Shared Mobility Action Plan document that was presented by McKnight Foundation in 2017. And the goal mentioned in that document was to elevate van pooling as a viable option for commuters. Prior to 2017, or really about 2020, we in MTS thought of van pooling as sort of a supplement to our express network. So if you could get to downtown Minneapolis, for example, on an express route, we said go ride the express route, don't vanpool, because we're already putting that express service on the street. We are changing the way that we think about this program a little bit. This study is one piece of it. To think of it more as people who vanpool aren't people who are going to ride an express bus. So really putting a couple of different types of options out there might get more ridership because they might be happy to ride in one mode versus a different mode. And so this 2017 study was sort of the start of turning the corner for us and thinking about it. And we also then did our own study in 2022 to talk about or to study what types of hindrances did people have to utilize in the program. So we talk about simplifying the pricing structure, improving the website presence, improving the reporting requirements, and the reporting process. We've also had other feedback just through normal channels, employer outreach, so on, that talk to us, especially post-COVID, about putting 5 people in a vehicle together throughout the week is a difficult thing, getting that many people to share a ride. And so we're looking to make a few changes there. So specifically, this slide talks about what our current program structure is and what our new program structure will be under this new contract. And so I talked to you just a little bit ago about restricting and duplicating downtown fixed route availability. We are eliminating that duplication restriction. We are looking to ask our contractor to help us formally with outreach. The transit management organizations today, including Metro Transit, do the vast majority of the outreach in the program. And so we're asking our contractor to help us with that. We are simplifying our vehicle size and our vehicle pricing as well. You can see that here. This slide shows you the current pricing at the top and then pricing under our new contract. And the way that we do pricing today and that we have done pricing is essentially we have subsidized 50 or 55% of the van pool price, the lease price, rental price of the van, and the rider pays 45% or 50%. And so you get a whole variety of vehicle sizes, price points, so on, depending on mileage, and it just is a very complicated way of looking at it. So we said, well, let's say to the customer, you put in $700 for a low mileage, $800 for a mid mileage, $900 for a high mileage. We limit it down to 7 passenger, either a minivan or an SUV, because 90% of our participants are using that vehicle size. And we say it's a pretty straightforward program. So you get rid of a lot of price points and put it down to 3 price points: low mileage, medium mileage, high mileage. We are also working on a couple of the other things, as I mentioned, around reporting and so on. That's not part of this contract, but just part of the program as a whole. We are also going to pay for the fuel. Fuel fluctuation in price has been a real problem for transit providers, for us, for van poolers to know what their overall cost will be. And so we said to take that unknown out of the equation, we will take care of that for you. And so that flat rate is truly a flat rate for the van to participate in the program. So that's the basics around the program and how the program works and some of the ways that we're making a change for the program. We have outsourced our administration of the rental of the fleet and administering of the participation to enterprise across the years. And in this business item, we are recommending that we enter into a new agreement with enterprise. And so
We do administer this program with a multi-year contract like we do with other contracted programs that we have in MTS. And so we procured this new contract in that same approach. So we issued a request for proposals in early May. We received one proposal from Enterprise. Because we received one proposal, procurement does a review to ensure that the specifications of the RFP were not restrictive, that other entities could have proposed if they wanted to, they chose not to. It is a very limited market in this type of work. It was not a surprise to MTS that Enterprise was the only proposer. So we went through a process, as I said, of determining that the RFP was not restrictive. We also then went through a process of reviewing the proposal just like we would in any RFP and ensure that the proposal was reasonable, that the pricing was fair and reasonable, and went through that process. So the result of that is that we are recommending Enterprise for the next 5 years of Metro Van Pool Program Administration. And with that, the proposed action is that the Metropolitan Council authorize the regional administrator to negotiate and execute Contract 23P152 with Enterprise Leasing Company of Minnesota, LLC, for management and administration of Metro Van Pool in an amount not to exceed $4,635,285. And with that, I'll take questions.
Very good, thank you. Questions or comments?
So
Councilmember Tyrone Carter.
I just want to be clear, so this is for the public at large, so this is not restricted to Metro Council employees?
That is correct, Madam Chair and Councilmember Carter. This is a public transit program, that is correct. Okay. The way that we run the program, if I didn't state this clearly before, is we work with businesses or groups of businesses to get groups of employees to commute together. So I live by St. Thomas. I work in downtown St. Paul at Robert Street. If there were 3 or 4 other people that lived near me, we could get together. We could rent a van from Enterprise. The council would subsidize that such that the van's cost is what was mentioned in the presentation, and we would go to the Met Council. We have, Best Buy has been a company that has a lot of employees over the years that have used the program. The Air National Guard and the reserve base at the airport are right now very large users of the program. I think about 1/3 of the program participants come from those 2 entities. But it is general public, it is employers region-wide. We actually do reverse commute out to Litchfield and Hutchinson and those kinds of things, bring people in from Mankato. So there are from Wisconsin as well. And so it's a very broad ranging program for the 58 van pools that we run.
Looks like a great program. What's the projected active van pools for the next 5 years? You guys have like a kind of...
Sure. Madam Chair and committee member, the program has been about 50 to 75 van pools participating over the years. That's really been the high water mark for us. We've not been a region with enough traffic congestion to really drive van pooling to the heights that some regions have. Seattle is a really outstanding region when you think of van pooling. They have several hundred van pools. We've been always in that 70-ish van pool range. I anticipate that we will be about that level. I don't see a lot of expansion. We do have to let people know that we're simplifying the structure, simplifying the reporting. But the market is a relatively small market in this region for van pooling overall, to be frank about it. But it is nice to go to it, to have the TDM partners go to a business, and if we don't have bus routes to offer, we can tell them work from home is an option. We can bring out van pooling, and there are, we get a pool here and a pool there from businesses as we do that outreach.
Thank you. I think it's another great option. Thank you.
Okay, additional questions? Councilmember Chambliss?
Yeah, just out of curiosity, do some of those businesses subsidize the customer fee, which on our website it says it's averaging about $110 per month per participant?
Certainly, Madam Chair and committee member, yes is the short answer to that question. That typically van pools that participate in this program are not only receiving Met Council subsidy, but they are also receiving employer subsidy. Today I mentioned that the Air National Guard and the reserves at the airport have a lot of participants. The federal TIP program pays for the commuter share of that. That comes from a federal program. So the participants from those two bases at the airport, essentially the riders don't pay. And so, I mentioned they come in from Mankato. They actually go up to Fort Ripley, once a month or whatever, and they're using our vans to do that in a shared way. But they tend not to pay. We've, over the years, had Best Buy has subsidized such that each participant was paying $25 per month. And so across the years, we've had various employer participation. Most vans have employer participation, across the years. It has not simply been our subsidy.
Thank you.
Okay, additional questions or comments? Councilmember Cameron?
I apologize if you mentioned this and I missed it. Is the program exclusively for employers, or are there other opportunities where people use a regular carpool service where they could utilize our van pool?
Madam Chair and committee member, this is a commuter van pool program. So this is designed to take people to and from work sites, from home to work, essentially home-based work trips. This is not to do things like once you get to work, if you get a group together and go out to a work site, that's not this program. This is, if I need to get from my house to Robert Street to start my day, that's the market that we serve, if that answers the question.
Yeah, I was thinking more along the lines of, let's say you have a group home and a day service program. Could participants utilize the van pool program in that scenario?
Madam Chair and committee member, I will answer this a little bit, and Mr. Carlson may want to add on to this. And if the participants are going to work, then this would be the program for them. We have had one long-standing van, which essentially I think got grandfathered in. It began a number of years ago and has just continued, that goes to a day service location. We in MTS are working, have been working on a pilot program. This is not in my work area, but I just know that we have worked on a pilot program to fill the niche that you're talking about, to do trips that are going to day service locations. That isn't a work trip. That is a participation in a day service. So it doesn't truly fit the definition of this program, but we have recognized it as a need within MTS and have been working on other solutions. And I don't know if Charles
Director
Carlson's
Carlson.
prepared to.
Yeah, sure thing, Madam Chair, Council Member. Part of the calculus in that, in those scenarios is reducing the trip count on Metro Mobility. So kind of the balance, it really was more favorable both to the council and to the program to assist them with lease of another vehicle. So it functions a bit like van pool, but it's not Metro van pool.
Okay, so in that program, do they have to be Metro Mobility qualified?
Madam Chair, I'm not certain, but I believe so.
Councilmember Carter?
Thank you. I have not observed continuously how this program has grown and promises to meet many of the needs that otherwise would go unmet with potential employees or employees living in certain areas with jobs being located in other areas, and sometimes a transit mismatch as those employers have felt. But I'm really, really gratified to hear that this is growing. People vote with their feet, that employers are voting for it by supporting it through subsidy, and that employees are making good use of it. On that people vote with their feet piece, can you tell me about the growth of this program from its inception to its current utilization, and maybe what you're hearing with respect to how it is meeting that gap need that currently exists?
Sure, Madam Chair and committee member. As I mentioned, the program started in about 2001. It was probably about half the size of its largest size, at about 70 van pools early on. We've tried actually to not grow the program over the years because I mentioned the philosophy we had about trying not to duplicate. So really we've discouraged van pooling to downtowns across the years because we've tried to push people to our express network. We have seen the number of vans ebb and flow with fuel pricing. When fuel went, when was this, 2008? Whenever fuel went from like $1 a gallon to $4, whenever that was, all of a sudden everyone said, we need to be in van pools. How can we get into a van pool? Fuel really drove it. The fuel price came back down. It's very much a fuel sensitive. Instead of 4 tanks or 5 tanks of fuel being spent, that's the most immediate expense people feel. And so if you can get into a van, when the price of fuel came back down, people kind of backed away. We've seen when we've had work slowdowns, a little bit more higher unemployment, we've seen this kind of program be a little bit more soft in its number of participants. There are some things, as I mentioned here, our hope. There are some things I mentioned here that we're trying to streamline because we hope that we can, for this very modest program, increase the number of participants. As I mentioned, we're about the mid-50s. We've been as high as 70, some vans pre-COVID. I would really love to see our program get to maybe 100 vans overall, now with the streamlining of the process. And so, but it is nice, as I say, for service development to go out or our rideshare folks to go out and to say, we have these offerings for you, and this is one of them. Bix Produce on 35E north of downtown St. Paul is an example where we went to Bix and said, you have a need, we have a program. Sometimes it doesn't work out because you do have to have someone driving the vehicle, and sometimes finding someone who's consistent enough and with a driving record sufficient enough is difficult. And I'll give you just one other example of how this really fits in well, and that is there was a temp agency, and I forget the name of it now, on the east side of St. Paul that was taking people out to Best Made Cookies in Wisconsin, out on the 94 corridor in Wisconsin. And it was temp employment. People would change all the time in the van, but they had someone who was driving and working for long-term, and so they had a driver. And so the temp agency was the renter of the vehicle. And so we've partnered in that way as well. So there's a lot of creativity in a 50, mid-50 van pool kind of program, but it does give us that option to say it's another tool. And it's a modest tool for us, but it is another tool for us.
Thank you. Additional questions or comments? Councilmember Cameron?
I just have to mention that I did write down to reach out to Bix about this program, so I'm glad you're already on it.
Yeah, our service development folks and our rideshare folks have had quite a conversation with Bix over time. Sorry, Madam Chair.
All right, any others? All right, I just have one comment. I'm really happy to see, just with both the simplification, but also in our changing environment, the relaxation of the downtown prohibition. If you look at Network Now, a number of the routes that were permanently cut were express commuter routes. And so I think that this, it might be a different group of businesses that everyone needs to start engaging as far as the TMOs and rideshare and downtown business organizations and things like that, because you might have some of that dynamic, but maybe not the same volume. So just a thought. So if there's no other questions, then I'd entertain a motion to approve business item 2024-181.
So moved.
Moved by Councilmember Cameron. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Chambliss. Is there any other discussion?
Thank you.
Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. And turning back to John for business item 2024-216.
Yes, Madam Chair, this item is mine as well. A couple months ago, I brought to you a business item for entering into a contract for operations of Metro Micro, our microtransit program. And I mentioned at that time that I would be coming back to you at a future date, and this is the date, to bring forth a business item to enter into a long-term contract for software. So microtransit, that's the mode of service. Metro Micro being our program for microtransit is an app-enabled, essentially Uber for buses, app-enabled program where customer goes on the app and says, I'd like to ride from point A to point B within specified zone, and we match them up with a bus that's out in that zone to deliver a ride that's efficient for them and effective for them and efficient for us within the service zones. And so getting good software that facilitates that reserving of rides real time is important. We are using and have been using on a pilot basis via software, and we are, as we do in MTS, went out for an RFP for a 5-year contract to replace that 2-year pilot with a longer-term contract. And we released an RFP on June 5th. We received 4 proposals. We received 2 very good proposals and went through a process of reviewing those proposals, getting demonstrations of that software, and having a proposal review team plus a couple of technical experts review those proposals. We, as usual, have a variety of folks. I was on this panel, and Metro Transit and an MVTA staff person participated, and we had, like I say, we had a couple of technical folks. And we reviewed the proposals and determined that the proposal given to us by Spare Labs Inc. is the one that was the best value for the council for the 5-year agreement. So I bring to you the proposed action that the Metropolitan Council authorize the regional administrator to negotiate and execute contract 24P015 with Spare Labs, Inc. to provide software that will support microtransit service operations in an amount not to exceed $852,100. That I'll take questions.
Thank you. Questions or comments from council members? Councilmember Cameron.
So, since, and maybe you knew this behind the scenes, but, since the publication of Network Now, and we're adding 8 additional microtransit sites, does this, do we feel comfortable and confident that this contract will be able to accommodate that increase in microtransit service areas?
Madam Chair and committee member, we specified in the RFP this service expansion, 9 zones across the 5-year term of this agreement. Being able to facilitate multiple zones with a variety potentially of different approaches, curb to curb versus what we might call corner to corner or virtual stop kind of service, was absolutely part of the review that we did. Interfacing, if I may say, interfacing with other council apps or providing that user experience was also critical because we know each of these zones is matching up to the end of a BRT route. And so making that a end-to-end trip for the customer was an important review point for the panel as well.
Additional questions, comments? All right, seeing none, I'd entertain a motion to approve business item 2024-216, same week.
So moved.
Moved by Councilmember Tony Carter. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Tyrone Carter. Is there any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Thank you. All right, on to our final business item of the night. It's 2024-260 is the Midtown Greenway Bicycle and Pedestrian Trail Expansion Planning Contract. We have Steve Elmer here.
Great. Thank you and good afternoon, council members. I'm Steve Elmer from, I'm planning analyst with Metropolitan Transportation Services, and today for this business item, I want to give you a brief intro into this Midtown Greenway Bicycle and Pedestrian Trail Expansion Planning Project. I'm sure you're all aware the idea of extending the Midtown Greenway across the Mississippi River into St. Paul has been a long-held concept, a long-held idea, and a considerable opportunity for connecting the Twin Cities for people that bike, walk, and roll. And with the intent to forward this long-held concept into project development, the 2023 state legislature, through its omnibus transportation finance bill, directed the Met Council to plan for a continuous and dedicated bike pedestrian trail from the eastern terminus of the Midtown Greenway across the Mississippi River via the Short Line Rail Bridge and into St. Paul and terminating at Allianz Field, and also to include a trail connection to the edge of the University of Minnesota main campus at 27th Avenue Southeast. And this is a planning project, the purpose of which is to develop a conceptual plan to extend the Midtown Greenway that provides for a new transportation connection and recreational opportunity that advances the concept to project development. And to put a picture to words, this is the map of the Midtown Greenway expansion planning project corridor planning area. And we're denoting the on-rail, near-rail alignments in purple and offline extension and connections in green. And I don't know how to use a pointer on this here. I'd point to you, but it shows you the main connection from the eastern terminus on the east side, sorry, the west the western edge of this map, across the river, the Short Line Bridge, into St. Paul, and all the way, it kind of follows the rail corridor and I-94 through a major stretch through there, and finally terminates at Allianz Field, and then that spur route that goes to the north to connect to the main campus for the University of Minnesota is also parallel to a rail corridor with an existing rail storage yard and is adjacent to I-94 as well. Okay, what happened? There we go. And now I want to give you some more details about the project work plan. And the Midtown Greenway Trail Expansion Planning Project has an anticipated completion date of late 2025. And it will be carried out in 3 phases. Phase 1 is pre-planning. And the pre-planning phase will include a review of local and regional plans to determine what are the implications for project development and construction. It will also include an extensive existing conditions review that will analyze across environmental issues and physical constraints, and will also provide develop the base mapping database for the entire project in general and specifically for concept development. Phase 2 is conceptual planning and design, and this will include 3 parallel and coordinated efforts, starting with developing the conceptual layout plan for the preferred trail alignment, as was prescribed in the state law, and also will include a phasing analysis of trail segments or subsegments to determine appropriate segment phasing and any interim alignments. And thirdly, we'll analyze 3 design concepts for trail-only or shared-use trail over the Short Line Rail Bridge across the Mississippi River. Phase 3 is a summarization and conclusion phase. And this, most importantly, will provide a project implementation plan that lays out several things. One, it will give an outline of detailed steps needed to complete the design process and to obtain project approvals and permits. It will also describe any land acquisition or property easement requirements. It will also identify government agency roles for leading environmental review, permitting, and construction, and then also for who would own or operate and or maintain the trail post-construction. The last thing it will include is a phasing plan and timeline for implementing segments on or off the rail corridor. And this phase will culminate with the drafting the comprehensive final report. This will summarize the overall concept planning process and will include details about the results of our outreach and engagement activities through the course of the project. And then lastly, for engagement and outreach, our consultant will provide an engagement plan near the beginning of the project and will include several entities here. We'll begin with bringing together the technical work group, which will be staff from our participating agencies listed here. I would also note that we consulted with each of these agencies during the scope development process for this project. And then in addition to that, we'll meet with federal and state regulatory and permitting agencies, but we'll also look to confer with the tribal historic preservation officers to get some tribal representation in this project review. We will engage with City of Minneapolis districts and St. Paul wards, as well as neighborhood organizations in both cities. And we'll offer opportunities for community stakeholders and other advocacy groups to become involved through public events and or online engagement opportunities. So that's my intro to this study, and I do have the business item here, but I can stop here if there are any questions. Madam Chair.
All right, thank you, Steve. I'm going to actually turn to Director Carlson to kind of address some of the questions from earlier, so.
Yeah, so at the beginning of the meeting, as Steve was coming in, there were questions for the council and two particular items. One of the questions was, and maybe this is a question for you, Steve, one of the interests is in estimating construction costs for the extension. That's not described explicitly as a task, but is that part of the plan that Kimley Horn would be estimating construction costs as the law spells out?
Yes, short answer is yes, that's all included and was, yeah, one of the detailed subtasks. There's several different places and phases where we do estimate costs for comparison, yep.
And Madam Chair, the other element of it, and thanks again for the comments, and we look forward to further discussion, relates to the agreement or the draft agreement or easement with the railroad regarding the bridge. And to that extent, the council will complete all of the activities that are in law. This contract will not fulfill all of those requirements. So we would be separately developing either another RFP or other mechanisms to gain those skills and experiences. We know from the Chicago Lake easement discussion even tonight that shared use arrangements and easements are complex legal instruments that require a lot of stakeholder interaction. That's very different from typical engineering work, and that's why it's not part of this engineering and planning level contract. Instead, we'd be pursuing that through other means. But absolutely, we'd be addressing every element of the law, including that one. Because it's specialized, it would be through another mechanism.
Thank you.
Questions from Councilmember Tony Carter.
I appreciate your addressing that ahead because there have been questions about the intent of the legislation and the desire for there to actually be either a shared use agreement or a memorandum of understanding as intent of that legislation. What I'm hearing you say is that that absolutely is to be a part of the work in process, although it may be in a separate action that will also come before the council. A question that I still have, perhaps know the logical answer to, but would love to hear it, is given that being a part of the intent, does it make sense to employ this work ahead of time, the technical work, to assess the alternatives, not knowing whether there in fact is an option that would be real with the railroad?
Yeah, Madam Chair, Councilmember Carter, it's a great question. Certainly, I think they'll build on each other to a certain extent. Steve, if you want to comment on the on the question.
Which comes first, the chicken or the egg?
Yes, thank you for your question, Madam Chair and Council Member. Yes, it is a really good question as to the disposition of the railroad. Railroad coordination will be a major part of this contract in terms of coordinating and getting reactions from them. I would just say railroads are not known for giving upfront answers early on in processes, in design processes in particular, in terms of being committal one way or the other. So that, we're not expecting that would be different in this case. And so we are, to address that possibility that they say no, we have included an option for looking at a separate trail-only bridge across the Mississippi River as a contingency, not as the preferred trail alignment or anything, but as a contingency in the event that there's nowhere to go with the railroad. And we got full support from our agency partners on that particular point. And that actually came up and was added to the scope as a result of those conversations.
A follow-up, please. Madam Carter. Thank you. And so what I was listening for, and perhaps is assumed in your response, is that there is a certain amount of information that you may need to even ask the question. As you said, they're not known to say, yeah, that's a great idea, let's figure it out. you kind of have to put something in front of them, I'm assuming. And that is the intent of including the option as you move forward.
Yes, Madam Chair, Councilmember, yes, in the affirmative. I agree with that.
Yeah, thank you for the affirmation. Thank you.
There's no questions, comments? All right, I just want to say I really appreciate the description both from you and from Director Carlson. I think that's very helpful information. Having served under a council where we did have a kind of run-in with the railroad who had, until down the road, didn't change their mind. So I really, really appreciate that we have a parallel dual path for this, because I think the intention of the legislation is to make the connection. And that's really the ultimate goal. So I'm really happy that we're approaching it from two different angles. So that's good to hear. All right, with that, any final questions? All right, then I would entertain a motion to approve business item 2024-260.
Motion to approve?
Moved by Councilmember Chambliss. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Second by Councilmember Tony Carter. Is there any other discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay, and the motion carries. And that concludes our business. If everyone agrees, I would say number 1, the Chicago Lake Transit Center. Number 5, the same week item, and 6, the Greenway Trail would go non-consent to full council. Okay, very good. All right, now we're on to the proposed 2025 through 2030 Transit Capital Improvement Program. We have Ed Petrie and Heather Kiesel here.
Good afternoon, Chair, Committee members. Ed Petrie, Director of Finance, Metro Transit.
Heather Giesel, Director of Finance and Administration for Community Development and Metropolitan Transportation Services.
Our presentation tonight is about 34 slides, so we will try to be efficient as we're going through them, noting the time. A lot of the information is consistent with the prior years, just with updated numbers, information, those types of items. So we'll just move forward. So first of all, I'll kind of talk about overall transportation overview, which will be a consolidated Metro Transit, Metropolitan Transportation Services. Heather will go into some detail on Metropolitan Transportation Services. Then I'll follow up with some additional drill down detail on Metro Transit. First of all, we've talked about this when we went through the operating budget presentation. We're right now tonight talking about the capital budget presentation. That'll actually go to the council now on October 9th, I believe it is. So you will see Heather and I again on October 9th talking about the capital presentation. It'll then go out for public comment, for the 45-day public comment. It'll then come back to the council back for the first meeting in December, where the council will then will present to you any changes in the operating or any changes in the capital. At that time, you'll then will request for adoption of the budget in the first meeting then in December. As we talked about with the operating budget, the basis of the budget is the development. It's through Minnesota Statute 473-125. It's that the regional administrator will recommend to the council both an operating and a capital budget. So as consistent when we talked about the operating budget, the annual budget development that we're committed to bringing, being good stewards of the public funds as we carried our mission. On the operating side, as we talked about previously, we showed all the expenditures to support all the operations, including all the payroll, rent, debt service, all those funds, including all the revenue sources. Tonight, we're going to talk about the capital side, which will show the expenditures involve the major categories like fleet, public facilities, support facilities, technology, transitway development, those types of items. And once again, this is all the basis for the development is 473-125. Transportation Division, as we talked about before, we operate, administer, and coordinate the public service for the Twin Cities metropolitan area. It includes the Metro Transit family of services and the Metropolitan Transportation Services family of services. So on Metro Transit, it includes current operations of bus, the Metro Blue and the Green lines, North Star, Metro Orange and Red lines, ABRT, and then the capital project development, which would include like all the future, like the Metro Green Line extension, Metro Blue Line extension, all the future BRTs that we are building. On the MTS side, it includes contracted bus, special transportation services, which is Metro Mobility, planning, Transit Link, and van pool. Capital program, when we talk about the operating program, those are basically, a lot of it is like one-year slices, a one-year view. A capital program, capital projects are basically a very long view, or can be a long view. As you can imagine, for example, on a Like, for example, when we're building a major transitway, it could take 4 to 5 years to plan it, get it ready to go, then another 4 to 5 years to build it. For example, bus procurements. A bus procurement takes time to do the RFP, so it's anywhere from, it could be 12 to 24 months from when we start that RFP process. Go out on the street, get the bids in, work with the vendor, sign the contract, and then actually have the buses delivered and put into revenue service. It could be 12 to 24 months. As we talked about, major construction projects like garages or transitways are multi-year. The big thing that we've always talked about is the fact that what we're going to talk about tonight is the CIP, which is our plan. When the funding becomes secured in 25 and the years after, we will then move the project then from the CIP into the ACP, or the authorized capital plan. We cannot move a project forward until funding is secured. At that point in time, once it's secured, we will then meet with the project managers. They can then begin issuing contracts, which will then come back before the council for purchases of buses, construction, et cetera. We have multiple revenue sources that we'll talk about tonight. But the bottom line is also that we also have our regional asset preservation plans. Now we're making sure that all of our assets maintain a state of good repair, especially federally funded assets, for example, a bus. A bus has a 12-year life. When we buy a bus using federal funds, we have an agreement with the federal government that we will maintain that bus into a state of good repair for a minimum of 12 years. If we dispose of it prior to that 12-year life, we will then straight line basis, owe the money back to the feds for their proportionate federal share. We have a very large system. We have over 1,000 regular route buses, Metro Mobility fleet of about 639, over 1,100 customer shelters, 16 support facilities, 41 rail platforms, 65 parking structures. So a very large system that we operate. When we talk about the 25 through 2030 CIP, we look at it in two different ways. First of all, we want to make sure that we are fiscally balanced. We're also, as we talked about last year, we're including the regional sales tax within the plan. But the overall plan is about a $6.5 billion plan. Of that, we kind of break it down. $1.25 billion has already been authorized by the council. So what that means is these are projects that the funding has become available through the capital budget process. The council then authorized that, and that will continue to be spent out during this 6-year period. That's $1.25 billion. But we have $5.25 billion or $5.24 billion of new projects that are in the CIP. It's in the vision, it's in the plan. That funding has not yet been secured. Once it's secured, we will then begin moving it into the ACP. One of the other spins that we'll talk about this evening is that's the full plan, very, very transitway dependent, transitway heavy. So if we back out the blue and the green line extensions, we're left with about $3.1 billion, less blue line, less green line, of which $2.1 billion is in the plan and just over $1 billion has currently been authorized. Once again, our focus is on safety, asset preservation, and long-term capital maintenance. Revenue sources that we've talked about historically. First of all, the first one is regional transit capital. We're assuming a 3.3% growth during this period of time. If you recall, we request legislative authority from the legislature every 2 years for regional transit capital, which is backed by property taxes. But generally, we use the regional transit capital as the match on our federal funds. Generally, when we do a federal grant, it's generally an 80-20 split. 80% federal, a 20% local match. We will generally use, like on buses, regional transit capital as our match. We've also included any state bonds that are appropriated and anticipated. This is mainly on the transitway projects. We've included regional sales tax. We have some local other funds, some of the county funds, like on the growth of the Metro Blue and the Green Line extensions. And then we have our family of federal funds, which includes all of our formula dollars, our state of good repair, bus and bus facilities, our federal regional solicitation, or also known as CMAQ money. And then we also have our new starts and our small starts projects. So our capital priorities, first of all, are maintaining our current system. As I talked about before, it's maintaining it into a state of good repair. We replace all of our vehicles per fleet plans. We have very detailed both bus and light rail fleet plans, so we're replacing the vehicles according to those plans. Maintaining and repairing our existing facilities. We actually do facility condition assessments every year on a number of our facilities, rating them on a scale of 1 to 5, making sure we're in compliance and maintaining those assets into a state of good repair. We're also going to continue to meet the Metro Mobility ridership demand, which Heather will talk about that. On the expansion side in the building of the transitways, I've talked about it includes the Metro Green Line Extension, Blue Line Extension, the build-out of our various bus rapid transit and ABRT programs. We have some expansion vehicles, our zero-emission bus transition program, our support and customer facilities, and a number of technology projects. Now we finally move into some numbers. The $6.49 billion, you can see it's very heavy transitways, which is very heavy with the Blue Line and the Green Line Extension. That's about 63% of the dollars. The next big portion then would be fleet, which would be replacement of all of our fleet. Metro Transit, we have our 40-foot buses, 60-foot buses, we have some electric fleet, some coach buses, and then the other portion would be a large number of Metro Mobility fleets for the replacement. We have our facilities, which will include both support and customer facilities, and other costs, which a lot of that would be technology, fare collection systems, those types of items. If you back out what's already been authorized by the council, it brings you down to a $5.24 or $5.25 billion CIP, which I'll then move into here. So you can see once you back out what's been currently authorized, we're still very transitway heavy. It's just over $3.3 billion, which is transitways, which would be include the Metro Blue and Green Line extensions. We have some dollars for expansion, but the next biggest portion would be $1.5 billion, which is preservation of our current system, making sure we maintain our current system in a state of repair. On the right-hand side, you can see that all includes transitways at $3.4 billion, but the next biggest portion would be fleet, replacement of our fleet at just under $1 billion. Revenue sources includes all of our federal dollars at $1.3 billion. We have the local funds in here. We have regional transit capital, which we're using to match the federal funds. We have regional sales tax of $100 million. Federal regional solicitation, which would be CMAQ, and then some state money, which is then on those major transitway projects. So now let's just take a look at if we back out the Blue Line and the Green Line extension, you kind of get a different look of how it looks, especially on the right-hand side. You see if you back out Blue and the Green Line extension, we have a $2.1 billion project. Basically 90%, or excuse me, 70% of our budget is on preservation. So very heavily making sure it's both on transitway preservation, which is our current transitways, and then our base bus system. But it's maintaining our systems into a state of good repair. That accounts for 70%. And then we have some expansion dollars in there and some additional transitway costs. On the left-hand side, you can see out of the $2 billion, nearly $1 billion of it is fleet. As you would anticipate, the largest portion of our replacement costs is fleet. Revenues, very consistent with the previous slide. We have our federal dollars in at about 39%. We have a regional transit capital, sales tax, federal dollars from the regional solicitation, which is CMAQ, a little bit of county money in at $32 million, and a little bit of state money of $33 million. Heather.
Okay. So we'll start off reviewing Metropolitan Transportation Services, our 2025 capital program here. So just a reminder, this includes our contracted fixed route, special transportation services, so Metro Mobility, Metro Move, the suburban transit providers, and Transit Link. I will talk a little bit more about the suburban transit providers later on. We've programmed them slightly differently in our CIP this year, just given some ongoing conversations and around policy changes and how we pass through funding to the STPs. So the MTS 6-year CIP is just over $540.5 million, and almost 87%, or $472.1 million of that is supporting preservation of our existing system. So we fund preservation needs through a combination of federal formula dollars and RTC bonds. Fleet preservation accounts for over 3/4 of our budget and includes replacement of large and small buses for MTS, contracted fixed route, Transit Link, and Metro Mobility. Historically, we've also programmed suburban transit provider buses, but we've not modified that this year, and I'll talk more about that in a future slide, as I had mentioned. So between 2025 and 2030, we have $68.3 million in expansion planned, which is roughly 13% of the MTS CIP. Similar to our preservation budget, expansion is primarily funded with RTC and federal funds. The chart does specifically call out the regional solicitation or CMAQ funding that you can see there. So one of the roles that MTS plays is supporting suburban transit provider expansion projects that are submitted through the regional solicitation. So this includes existing matches to those regional solicitation projects. On the uses side, fleet costs represent over 31% of our expansion costs. This represents metro mobility expansion, suburban transit provider CMAQ projects, and a holding location for future CMAQ projects in years where the regional solicitation has not yet taken place. Technology is also for fleet expansion as well. So here you can see our fleet growth. Similar to the operating budget, metro mobility is the big driver on the capital side as well. This chart here is actually, the labeling is incorrect. We had a late switch, but this is just the MTS fleet. So this includes contracted services and metro mobility. But you can see here the growth since 2014 goes a little bit flat around the pandemic, just with ridership and delays with supply chain. But you can see starting last year and into this year, continuing growth as vehicle manufacturing has picked up, and we start programming for microtransit and other initiatives, and continued growth in metro mobility. So in 2014, we had 624 buses in MTS. In 2024, we will have 848, and we have another additional 85 expansion buses programmed by 2030. So moving on, starting July 1st of 2025, Metro Mobility and other special transportation services will become a state forecasted program. So planning is underway now. We continue to have conversations with MMB and our internal finance partners on, preparing for that, setting up reporting, and just getting set to go for the transition there. We have approximately $27 million in state funding programmed into the CIP for 2025. That is to get us into the first half of the year before the state takes over. So that's funding 100% of Metro Mobility technology, and then 15% as the federal match on fleet replacements. So moving on to the suburban transit providers. For this year, we have programmed all of the suburban transit providers and the University of Minnesota, their federal formula earnings. We have modified the allocation slightly to distribute the NTD, the 5307 earnings more equitably across the regional providers. So there's different incentives for ridership or population and density and things like that. And we have factored those in to provide them with additional resources for as we transition towards some of these policy changes. So right now, we have based the 2025 apportionment off of the 2024 federal apportionment using 2022 data. So we just inflated it in the CIP by 2.2%. So it comes out to $65.5 million in the 5-year CIP. So there's also a $2 million raise grant programmed into our CIP for the city of Plymouth, $12.5 million of CMAQ projects. There is no council match provided for those. It was not requested. The STP fleet has been removed from the CIP. We are no longer We have not programmed their specific planned vehicles into our CIP as we're having these conversations about transitioning, how funding is passed through and who's going to purchase vehicles. So the money is still in the MTS CIP, but it's been set aside into big bus, small bus, and I believe infrastructure buckets so that it is not allocated to any specific provider, but it is set aside as we're in this interim phase. And now I will transition back to Ed unless there are any questions.
Right.
Okay, so I'll move forward now with the Metro Transit. As we talked about, this is our family of services, which is the bus, all the Metro lines, BRTs, and Golden Purple. Some of the highlights in the Metro Transit's CIP, proposed CIP, first of all, it includes building out the network of the future. It includes both the green line and the blue line LRT extensions. Completing the gold B and E in 2025. We talked about that during the operating budget presentation. Those 3 services will go live in 2025. And then the purple line and the various ABRT in stages of those various lines moving forward. We're looking at creating a more reliable and faster service. We have another number of costs or number of investments in transitways, bus and rail overhaul programs, our bridge maintenance program, bus and rail state-of-the-art repair investments. We're looking at improving the customer experience. A lot of that focuses on like customer information systems, variable message signs, and if you recall earlier this year, you made an investment in the cubic fare collection system. We will be finishing that during this period of time, but then we'll also have some additional investments on fare collection, replacing some of the bus fare boxes, those types of items, money counting machines, those types of items that we will have various upgrades. We also have some investments on improving existing facilities, which would include customer station renovations, for example, at Lake Street, 38th Street, Uptown, Franklin, Rosedale, and some mobility hub investments and some bus shelters. Investments in enhancing safety and security. This would include lighting, cameras, emergency systems, continued investment in the workplace, which would include support facilities and vehicles, our material management storage facility, and then the OHB brake shop and some non-revenue facility maintenance investments. And we also have a sustainability investment, mainly with our zero-emission fleet infrastructure. General Manager Kendaris, during the operating budget presentation, she talked about Metro Transit Forward, and we're also encompassing Metro Transit Forward in our CIP also. Once again, our vision and mission is we connect people, strengthen communities, and improve lives by delivering high-quality public transportation. So we feel very strongly that's encompassed in operating, but it's also encompassed in our transportation plan for capital. As Leslie talked about during that presentation, our work is guided by 3 strategic priorities. First of all, it's employees, experience, and service. So under employees, it says we value employees and continuously improve how we attract, retain, develop, and support our workforce. On the experience side, we provide a consistently safe, clean, and welcoming experience on our system. And then on service, we offer service that is convenient, reliable, and environmentally sustainable. So what we did is we look at these 3 priorities and try to identify within our CIP projects that we have that basically fall under those. So under the employees, we're making our investments are in support facility upgrades, state-of-the-art repair, major improvements. We have some facility energy conservation and enhancement projects. We have the BPSI system, which is an investment across the council, and then we have various employee facility upgrades. Investments that we're making on the experience side, which is IS capital upgrades and enhancements, our fare box equipment, fare collection equipment, real-time signs, variable message signs, and our transit technology systems. On the service side, As I mentioned earlier, we have the material management storage facility and non-revenue facility upgrades and enhancements. We're investing in transitway expansion projects, whether it's the Metro Blue and Green Line extension or the various BRTs. We have some investments in transit advantages, customer facility renovations that we've talked about, and bus replacements, the zero emission bus plan, and our various overhaul programs, for example, on the light rail systems to maintain those systems into a state of good repair. So we feel very, very good about the fact is that we have investments hitting all three of these priorities. So moving into the Metro Transit family of services, we have about a $4.7 billion CIP. On the right-hand side, you can see it's very heavy, again, on which you would anticipate on transitways, which is mainly the Metro Blue and the Green Line extension. They're about 90% of that transitway cost. Then our next biggest piece would be preservation at just over $1 billion. On the left-hand side, you can see the various sources of funds. We have our federal, regional transit capital, which we use as a federal match. We have CMAQ, federal regional solicitation, a small sliver of local funds. We have county funding, state, and then regional sales tax. So now we'll drill down a little bit more. Let's talk about preservation. On the Metro Transit side, the biggest piece of our preservation is going to be on fleet. About 55% of our costs will go towards fleet. The next 24% will go towards facilities. Then the balance will go towards mainly technology, fare collection equipment. You'll see the various revenue sources, but the funding mainly on our preservation will include, we'll be replacing 408 buses during this 6-year CIP cycle. That would be 185 40-foot diesels, 47 electric buses, 20 coaches, and 156 60-foot Arctics. We also have a number of investments in our support facilities, energy enhancements, public facilities, repairs and refurbishment, ADA signage improvements, and some technology updates. So it's about $1 billion is our preservation for that 6-year period. We have a smaller amount in expansion, of which it's $289 million. The biggest piece of that would be in facilities and other, which is mainly supporting our build-out of our BRTs and our Metro and the Green Line extensions. So we have to have our support facilities, both customer and public facilities, to support that expansion. That includes bus and rail support infrastructure, non-revenue equipment, improvements to customer support facilities, various BRT buses, electric buses, and the associated infrastructure. That's $289 million. The next slice is the transitway costs, just over $3.3 billion, of which about 90% of that, you can see the very first two lines, within the period of this time. So one of the things I want to point out, this is showing the costs that will fall during the period of 2025 through 2030. So one of the questions you'd ask, well, on the very second line, the Green Line extension, you only see $190 million. And it's a $2.7, $2.8 billion project. Well, the reason is the rest of the costs came earlier, prior to 2025, have already been authorized, and that's in the ACP that we talked about earlier. But between the Metro Blue Line, Green Line extension, it's just under about $3 billion of the $3.3 billion, about 90%. Then we have the balance of our BRT projects, which would be the FGHJ Gold and Purple. We also have some planning funds and some additional projects on LRT and North Star. That makes up the total of the $3.3 billion. You can see in the revenue side's a lot of federal dollars, local dollars, regional solicitation, county funds, which is mainly on the Blue and the Green Line extensions. And then we have a little bit of sales tax and about $1 billion of state money. And with that, Madam Chair, we were efficient on the slides. That is our 25 through 30 CIP. We are coming back to the council on October 11th, and which we would take any questions now or on October 11th.
Any questions, comments? Councilmember Chambliss.
Well, I appreciate the recaps that we've been receiving while we've been council members. But I kind of feel like I had an aha moment with one of the last statements, in that we're aligning our budget with our strategic priorities. That really rings with me, because if we have priorities, The truth to those priorities is how we invest them and how we steward the use of those monies. So even though this is a budget presentation, you know, having seen that application and how we impact the region with these really sometimes small, very small projects and sometimes very large projects. So I appreciate the information.
Thank you, and I thank Leslie for that also.
Councilmember Pacheco.
Madam Chair, members, this is not it's more of a comment, I think, but it's not just strictly to this project. And what I'm looking at is that when I heard the project on Lake Street, and I've heard projects that we've been working on, and we're talking out to the community, nobody asks us to make it faster. They make it safe, they make it clean, to make it on time. But I mean, when we were meeting over in Edina, you know, yeah, but the route is going to be faster. And we were on Lakes, it's going to be faster. It's going to be, you know, and again, I haven't heard that when I'm out there. No one in the community meetings talking to the project say I want it to go faster. If anything, they say it's 20 is plenty, is in the neighborhoods. It's a 20 miles an hour should be thing because people are dying now because they're going too fast in these cities things. So I just, when we take another look at this going forward, I think we should be clear. We could be more efficient. We could do some things, but I just saying faster just doesn't get it to me.
And just a comment, I've heard both. You know, like you go out and talk, especially with some of our local routes, like people do request and really want them to be faster. And those are the ones that we're investing in with the ABRT systems. Because usually I know for sure on some of the routes, we've already built the ABRTs, and that's what you would hear, is it took too long to get from one place to another, that you couldn't successfully build that transit into your day. And so it's kind of a mix. So, but your point's very well taken. I think, you know, it is how we talk about it. But I think when you get out and talk to riders, it's a mix of what they want. All the things you said too. But yeah, you know, there's definitely some feedback I heard along the way. So, all right. Any other questions, comments? All right. Thank you. You were very efficient because I did not think I'd be saying this at 6:01, but we are adjourned.
Thank you.